Here on Guam, we're a very isolated island, right? So the medical care, the clinic does its best, but we don't have our own VA hospital, and we rely a lot on the Naval Hospital. At the clinic, when I worked at the clinic for 3 years, we had that was our biggest population, was veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. And so at the time, we didn't even have groups. We didn't have the capacity to hold groups at the time. Things have certainly grown. They now have 2 psychiatrists. They now have groups, but at the time, for a very long time, we only had 1 psychiatrist and myself, the social worker. So there were a lot of services that we couldn't provide. I couldn't understand why people were flying in from like Palau or Ponape or Chug, or even from the Philippines. Like, I didn't understand that. I was like, well, the Philippines has their own VA facility. They have their own VA hospital. They had, certainly, even if they didn't have that, which they do, they had a JCO accredited hospital. They had all these different kinds of services, but the criteria to be eligible for the services in the Philippines were very different. And I really had to think and go outside the scope of being a medical social worker and thinking, well, why are the rules different? Everyone's serving in the same war. Sure, they might have different duties. I served 6 years in the Air Force Reserve, and of course my motivation at the time was not to go to war, but to be entitled to all these benefits, especially educational benefits, right? I never took the time to really think through about what, the true ramifications or consequences could be, until much later, and that's kind of why I never re-enlisted. But I couldn't understand, like, why would the rules be different? Why would somebody who signs up, who swears in Kansas, why would they be offered different benefits than somebody who swears in on Guam? The sad reality is people who needed to go to Hawaii, which was our mother facility, you could go and the VA would pay for your treatment, but not everybody was entitled to the free airfare, right? And I thought, wow, what a huge injustice, because if you didn't meet the criteria to be able to fly free, well, then you'd have to fundraise, then you'd have to take a loan out, then you'd have to, do all these other things. Or people would choose, well, then I can't go, right? I don't have the money. I don't have $1,200 to buy my ticket to go to Hawaii. Yes, you're going to pay for the treatment, but how am I going to get there?
What makes me an advocate is the fact that coming home as a veteran is that we are not entitled to the benefits or the same freedom as many other veterans in the mainland. I found it hard being a physician in the VA because looking at a lot of stuff that the veterans were going through was not right, being a veteran himself. So I was able to see both sides of the wire. The hard part was I couldn't see how a veteran can come in and be turned away or was not given that service or that care. I lost my first marriage because of the disability of PTSD and TBI, and that my significant other at that time could not take it no longer. So it was hard for me. Recently, in 2010, I had a tragic accident. I overdosed on medication that the VA was giving me. I was taking about over 5 different pills at one time. And so the easiest thing to deal with my issues was to just take my own life that way. It was hard to see that we couldn't get anything here on the island. I came back to Guam after being medically retired in 2008. I came here in 2009 looking for help. I was left looking around the island, sending circles, and nothing was going on. I actually traveled to 6 different states, all in the West Coast, to finally get my VA done and done properly. From there, when I was finally done with the VA, I came back home and I decided to be the advocate for my generation, which is the younger generation. And that's what made me want to form an organization in the Pacific, not just for Chamorros, but for other Pacific Islanders west of Hawaii, where we have nothing. And as Tricia had mentioned, that during those times, there wasn't anything for us. There wasn't.
We're all patriotic out here. We're not anti-war. We were for mostly FSM. We look for a better life, so that's why we joined. And then, to look for better education, And so we can't complain. We got what we have.
Maybe if you could expand a little bit on those thoughts. I mean, you've been vocal in saying that you don't agree with Thomas Young being anti-war. Can you expand on that a little bit as like that veteran experience, how complicated that is?
Well, I think the reason why he was like this was he wasn't getting all the services he needed. Or, he got shot, he got paralyzed. I mean, we just started the war. VA's getting all these casualties coming in and they don't know how to respond quickly. I mean, he was treated for 2-3 months. Right now, you get shot, you might get treated for a year, and then you get all the services you want. We got one veteran now in the Panapa. He lost 2 legs, 1 arm. He has a van, same thing Thomas got, and he's living well. But for VA services and FSM, Palau and Marshall Islands, we don't have it. And when we come to Guam or Hawaii for services, we have to pay our own ticket. We have a lot of veterans with physical disabilities out there, but they're not getting services because we just don't have it.
Here on our island, we have a lot of patriotic people, and then we also have a lot of people who are very chamorro, and sometimes that can conflict. And I don't think one should cancel out the other. Yes, one of the problems here, and Rodney can attest to this, is we have such a hard time recruiting mental health professionals. These positions go unmet for years. And I've sat through interviews and we have very good candidates. They want to come, but either the salary is not up to par or the benefits are not up to par. And it's like, so what? Yes, there's rules, but can't you just change the rules to recruit people so that at least we have people that are going to serve our veterans?
The VA system has grown and changed a lot better than it was 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ago. And I can attest to that because I left the island. But it's sad that this is your own home and that you have to pay your own way to go get the proper service treated, especially when you're diagnosed with PTSD, TBI, fibromyalgia, and all the other major symptoms that affect your life. We get a doctor in for 6 months and they leave after that. We get a doctor for a year and they leave after that. So a veteran like myself who has to constantly come into this new doctor now, I have to repeat myself from the beginning again and restart. And so it becomes so frustrating is because I do not like to relive those moments or bring up those issues in the past. Like, are you really listening? And a doctor in Hawaii told me this, and my caregiver was there, my fiance, and he said this to both of us. Rodney, you need to leave Guam. There is nothing there for you to get help. How does that feel to be in the receiving end? And when Trish talks about patriotic and being a chamorro, that hurts me. Why are you telling me to leave my home? Pack up and go. I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm a disabled combat veteran. I fought for my rights. I fought for freedom. Why do I have to leave my home? In a sense, he's kind of right. There really isn't no treatment here. But the service is getting better, but it's not enough. And at the rate now that we've withdrawn from Afghanistan, although we're back into Iraq again, the more and more it's going to be frustrating for the clinic here in Guam because this capacity cannot sustain the amount of veterans who need that proper service. And I'm not just talking about one generation. I'm talking about the other generations before us, the Vietnam vets, the Korean War vets, World War II vets that are still surviving on our island, which we do have, and the family members, the dependents, along with that. In Hawaii, in Maui, Kona, and the other islands, they get the same treatment as it is in San Diego, New York, Virginia, Florida. Why not us? Why not us?
All of us vets have been talking about the services and the care that we've been getting on this island, and the other folks in the outer islands that are also seeking assistance with Guam VA, right? And I know that I saw a clip of a representative from the Hawaii office coming out to Guam and actually saying that we do not have the numbers that we have over, and at least they can account for, right, over 10,000 vets on this island. If they can honestly say we have 10,000 vets here, then why don't we have that hospital?
Really, nobody wants in the political side wants to talk about it, deal with it, especially on the federal side. One thing that, in talking with our congresswoman as well, and trying to get her to advocate with this, was the biggest problem that I pretty draw it out to her, which makes sense. But the biggest, the answer that I got back was that if we were to properly get these numbers counted fairly and get it documented on the federal registry and all that stuff, what would happen is now, because we are still a U.S. territory, and because we fall under Hawaii, that means that Hawaii would lose a portion of funding that's appropriated by the Senate and all that. And so Hawaii doesn't want that. You know, they don't want to lose that money because they enjoy it themselves out there. And so, and then Hawaii would just take credit for what numbers we have. And it's not hard to get numbers, if you ask me. It's easy. You can go to the active registry for the Military Department of Defense, and it'll tell you how many people we have. The census of 2010 gives you a number there, an idea. Sure, it's not less than 10,000. So it isn't hard to get numbers. What I do truly think, and I continue to push, is that our local political leaders need to do a harder job in pushing and advocating to get this done. Because as simple as, if you recall, the last time we had a census here, and he had this big hire on, and all these volunteers went around each village knocking on your door. What's so hard about appropriating funds to do that locally? Give someone a job to go around and get accountability. If we can do this coming Friday, if we can do a point-in-time count for the homeless, why can't we do a point-in-time count for veterans on Guam? Political leaders don't want to go that route. It's too much. And that's what I believe. Rod, it's not my priority. So we're not a priority. And I voted for you. And I sacrificed for this. I had 600 troops deployed. And that's not a priority for them and their family. What about the ones who are deceased and lost their lives? That's not a priority. So that's the continued struggle that I get as a founder, that's continuing to advocating for our rights as veterans.
What's the difference between naval hospital services? That cannot be extended to vets? I mean, they have this brand new spanking facility and nice and shiny, and you've heard about all of the grandeur of it. Our vets can't go to that?
Naval hospital, and we do see VA patients. I saw some today. Our inpatient facility is full of VA patients, and we're happy to serve them. I would say, I've always been an advocate. I wish we could join forces because it would make things a lot easier. I run the ICU. About 30% of the ICU patients are VA patients. It would make a lot of sense to have those doctors come over and help us take care of their patients, and we would love to take care of their patients. We do take care of their patients. With regards to things like the pharmacy, for example, they don't get, as far as I know, they don't get meds here. My patients, a lot of them come to the ER because they've got to order their meds from Hawaii. And when they run out, or they get to their last pill and they realize they're not going to have enough blood pressure medication, they'll go to the emergency room. So that's not a very smart system either. So like from my perspective, it would make a lot of sense to have this all under one roof, but really it's two different pots of money to your question. So there's a VA pot of money, there's a VA electronic medical health system, so their records don't talk to ours. Ridiculous. Ridiculous.
To all the veterans out here, thank you for your service. To the spouses, thank you for the service. Family members, thank you for your service. And for everybody else, thank you for your support for our service.